In this video, we are going to look at understanding gendered socialization. It's useful for us to start by looking at the difference in terminology between sex and gender. Sex is usually what we refer to as biological sex, and it is something that we see when a baby is born and they are sexed at birth. They come out and the doctor or nurse practitioner or individuals in the room on site go, okay, this individual is either a boy because he has a penis or a girl because there's not a penis. We do know that sex is not that straightforward, that sex actually doesn't fit in a binary, neither just gender, but the sex binary is broken by there being present individuals who do not fit the XX female or XY male binary. There are individuals with intersex conditions, and it is estimated that up to 4% of the population are intersex. And with gender is generally more performative. It's the things that we can see on the surface. The perceived gender of a little blob of humanness will often influence the way that little blob is shaped into a human with regard to their gender. So we do that at very, very early ages. We start by how we might talk to babies. A little boy or little girl might be talked to in different ways. Somebody who is perceived as a little boy, somebody might say, well, look at you, you handsome, rugged little man. And that same little blob of humanness, if they're perceived as female, might be talked to like, oh, look at you. Aren't you a sweet little pretty princess? We reinforce this again when we dress our babies in different ways. We dress boys often in ways that will allow for large gross motor movements and running and getting dirty. Maybe this little guy isn't running and getting dirty yet, but eventually the clothing that we put them in does encourage that, whereas little girls might be put in different clothing that would encourage them to sit and look pretty and not get their pretty clothing dirty. The expectations that individuals have based on the perceived gender of little ones, so individuals have expectations, families have expectations, and society has expectations. And when we apply those to the different genders, they might be exposed to different technologies or might be encouraged to do one thing versus another based on their gender. Girls might be encouraged to be nurturing and take care of the little ones just because they're girls. The play we encourage our children to have also will continue to shape and impact individuals as they grow. A boy is more likely to be presented with a workbench and mimic doing manual labor, things that they do with their hands. Whereas girls might be more likely to be presented with a makeup kit so that they can practice looking pretty. And as we grow older, we continue to be impacted by media messages. Up to 5,000 media messages per day per individual are impacting us, and a lot of them are related to gendered socialization. And the impacts from the society are compounded throughout our lifetimes. As we arrive in adulthood with our gender identities fairly well intact much of the time, we start to look at work and how it is valued. And historically, work that has been seen as typically masculine has been relatively more highly valued than work that has been seen as typically feminine. We have an example of where work that was once feminine and then became masculinized had actually gone from non-paid work into fairly well-paid work in the funeral industry. So years ago, more than a century ago, most all work that was done with the deceased was done by women in communities. And that was work that was just done. It was unpaid labor, much like we see in other spaces as well, like housework and childcare. In the funeral industry, about 100 years ago, there was a creation of an industry. The caring of the deceased was medicalized and commodified, and that industry was then taken over by men. And the women who had previously done that had been pushed out. And now that industry is continuing to evolve, where now the graduates of mortuary science programs are predominantly female, but they are only getting jobs at about 25%. So the majority of the people going into the industry, the people being hired are predominantly male, and women are having a hard time breaking in to that space. Why all of this is important and how this starts to come together in the context of this course is that socialization leads to skills and competencies that are often believed to be inherent or genetic, but they're actually born often from how we are socialized, how we spend our entire lives, and how life impacts us to be shaped into the individuals we are with the certain competencies that we hold. And we have this historical valuation of skills where masculine skills, or skills that are seen as masculine, are valued often over skills that are seen as feminine. But we're here in this course looking at how the future of work is changing all of that.